now know what the Niners' asking price is for Brandon Aiyuk. And as we've theorized, it's a high asking price. According to Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk, the New England Patriots, in the lead up to the 2024 draft, offered the 34th overall pick for Aiyuk. That originally was the 34th pick. New England traded out of that selection. But either way, that was a high second-round selection for Aiyuk, and the Niners turned that down, according to Mike Florio. He also added within his report over the weekend that there were 5 teams across the National Football League, among 32 teams in the NFL, who were willing to pay Aiyuk the contract extension that he is seeking. Here's the word from the man himself and Mike Florio. 49ers receiver Brandon Aiyuk recently asked for a trade. Before the draft, trade talks nevertheless happened. Negotiations occurred not because Aiyuk wanted out, but because the 49ers invited his representatives to explore whether another team would pay Aiyuk what he wanted on a long-term deal. At the time, the magic number was in the neighborhood of $28 million per year. That quite possibly has changed given the market-shifting deal given by the Vikings to receiver Justin Jefferson. Regardless, there were 5 teams, we're told, who were ready to pay Aiyuk what he wanted before the draft. If they could also reach acceptable trade terms with the 49ers, he would have been traded. So a couple of takeaways there. The Niners gave Ryan Williams and Aiyuk an opportunity and the leeway, the runway, to reach out to teams to see if they would give Brandon Aiyuk a new contract extension. There were 5 teams, according to Florio, that were willing to pay you up for Aiyuk services. The $28 million per year number is very interesting. And it doesn't surprise me that teams would be willing to pay that for Aiyuk, who last year was a top 10 wide receiver, and wide receivers are needed in today's NFL. Some teams are bereft of them, and their offenses really struggle because of that. The other part that's interesting is the Niners' demand and the asking price back for Aiyuk. They found out other teams willing to pay Aiyuk $28 million per year. The Niners had to have had an idea. We could probably afford something within that range. Otherwise, they may have moved on a deal. More from Mike Florio here. That part didn't happen. It's unclear what the Niners wanted at the time. They rejected an offer of a second-round pick from the Patriots. Other interested teams were and potentially still are the Steelers and the Commanders. Now, as I noted, that draft pick from New England, 34th overall. That's pretty good value, but Aiyuk, a second-team All-Pro last year, he was drafted 25th overall back in 2020. I know that the acquiring team would have to pay Aiyuk that extension, which could drive down the price tag from their vantage point, but the Niners made the right decision in not trading him away. My starting point is a first-round pick for Aiyuk. And now that he's demanded this trade, if Aiyuk wants to get dealt, fine. Go try to get traded. But unless a team is willing to give up a first-rounder and pay you, we're not moving off of you. Because 34th overall is not good enough value. It wasn't then. And a draft pick now doesn't really help us. Lastly, from Florio, a post-draft trade becomes problematic for the 49ers unless someone can offer a current player who will help the Niners win in 2024. If the best offer includes 2025 draft picks, the 49ers could be tempted to take a hard line with Aiyuk, requiring him to complete the final year of his rookie deal and then possibly tagging him and trading him after the year. Much of what happens depends on how firm Aiyuk will be in his request for a trade. Will he hold out of training camp? Will he stay out deep into the regular season, showing up in time to get credit for 2024 and setting the stage for an exit in 2025? That is also a possibility that Florio mentioned of the Niners franchise tagging Aiyuk next year and then trading him away to a team that is willing to give him that extension. We just saw that this past offseason with L'Jarius Sneed and the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs weren't willing to give Sneed the deal that he wanted. The Titans were. And then there was that franchise tag, pretty much the NBA version of a sign-in trade. And for Aiyuk, he's an elite player in this league. So that's why if I'm the Niners, I have the asking price firm with what I just said, it being, but why other teams would be willing to trade for him and then pay him. I mean, last year, despite the Niners not throwing the football that much because they have a run-centric offense, He was second in yards per catch, second in yards per target, second highest graded wide receiver according to Pro Football Focus. His EPA among all wideouts was number 2, and he was 7th in receiving yards. This reeks of a player who's a top 10 wideout in this league. That's what he did in 2023. When you invest in stocks, when you join forces with a company, when you take a chance on somebody, whether it's an athlete or an employee, what are you also looking for? You want to see them on an upward trajectory. You want to see them making progress. You want to see growth, because when you invest in them, you want to see that continued improvement. It's exactly what Brandon Aiyuk's done in his NFL career. It's not like you're paying him for past performances. You are paying him for what he's done, but what he can still become. Because I firmly believe that Aiyuk can be a better player in this league than what he's shown, especially if he gets even more targets from the Niners, if they change their offensive philosophy at least a little bit, or another team. Because look at the progress he's been able to make. Look at the strides that we have seen Aiyuk take in his 4 seasons in the National Football League. You still don't believe me that we're talking about an elite player here? You want to tell me that he's not an elite route runner? Or he doesn't have every single route to his route tree? Well, that's false, because I have the data to back that up. Reception perception with this graphic here. This is every route in the route tree. Aiyuk has had success to a wide margin in running every single route. 9, corner, out, comeback, flat, other, screen, slant, curl, dig, post. Look at all of the green here. Look at all of the success by route. And you see all the different percentages on your screen right here. And Aiyuk, I call him the Niners' number 1 true wide receiver because he is that true boundary outside X wide receiver who can win running any single route against any type of coverage. Whereas Deebo Samuel, while he's one of the most dynamic weapons in all of football, he's a little bit limited with the coverage that he can be successful against and the routes that he runs. Aiyuk, route percentage, 9, post, corner, out, dig, comeback, curl, flat, slant, other, screen. He's finding success in a variety of areas. And here on the show, we've also talked about how he has success against man. He has success against zone. He has success against press. And we're talking about him being in the 95th percentile, 96th percentile in all of those categories. So if he were to get more targets, I think he'd put up even bigger production, and his asking price could be even higher. The fact that his asking price could be 28 to 30, the Niners could actually get him at a bargain rate because of how good he could be if he were to go somewhere else, getting the football in a much more pass-happy scheme. Going to be fascinating to see how this plays out, how much money Aiyuk gets, if the Niners hold firm on their asking price, and what transpires here. Because clearly the Niners value him. They don't want to trade him away, and they've gotten some pretty solid offers for Aiyuk, and they haven't moved. Make sure you give me a follow on social media. I'm on X. I'm so close to 13,000 followers. Let's get there for Brock Purdy. And on Instagram, everything is popping right now. I put out a lot of short-form content in addition to long-form content on my social media pages. Don't be a stranger. Say what's up and keep it locked here for the best Niners training camp coverage, which begins this week. Can't wait.